starting over again. So I want to talk about crystals and spirituality, and I may roll off into menopause and cycles and the wheel of the year, because if you know me at all, you'll know all of those things are kind of my jam. I'm B. I am the facilitator of the Illuminated Priestess Path. My website is BePriestess.love. And I'm sitting here thinking about starting an in-person circle at Samhain and moving through the priestess initiations with the Wheel of the Year, which I think would be absolutely a beautiful thing to do in person. So if you're interested in that, let me know. There will be an option to, sorry, I'm adjusting my computer, to lodge here on the banks of the Elizabeth River with the other women doing the circle. So crystals and spirituality, and yeah. So last weekend, I was at an amazing fair, an ascension and psychic fair or something like that, at a local yoga studio. And there were a lot of people there doing a lot of good work. Vendors and teachers and leaders, families out there with their children, and the weather was actually amazing for what we normally have in southeastern Virginia this time of year. It's normally about the same temperature and humidity as the inside of a mammal's mouth, like a dog's mouth here. But we had lower humidity and lower temps in the 80s. I can't remember what that would be in Celsius, but hot, but not excruciatingly hot. And with the lower humidity, it was really beautiful. I went to an amazing sound healing that my friend Bluebird, AKA Jackie Schilberg, and her partner, David Michael Tardy, an amazing divine masculine, offered. And then I taught a little class on the Wheel of the Year after they were complete. So yeah, it was a beautiful afternoon. And as I walked through the vendor area and saw all the tents, I noticed that almost everyone there was a crystal vendor. And this was at an event for a spiritual community. And I know that as our spiritual community, and most spiritual communities are very much into crystals. They're used in radios. They are frequency carriers, clear quartz crystals in particular. And we have ascribed specific meanings to different stones. They're not always the same depending on the teacher, right? But as we step out onto a spiritual path, frequently find ourselves becoming involved in crystal healing and in the procurement of crystals for our own healing and for up-leveling our own vibration. And that definitely was part of my path, right? I mean, crystals are beautiful. They're beautiful and they feel really good, or they can feel really good. You can see over my shoulder here, right there, I have a beautiful fluorite bear. But over the years, what I have come to realize is that crystal and gem mining is horribly traumatic for the planet. And I think it's time for those of us in spiritual communities, for those of us who walk the path of Earth Keeper or Earth Guardian, to recognize that crystals are one more form of toxic patriarchal spirituality, that they're one more form of consumeristic spirituality, and that they are not beneficial for the planet that we live on. And I'm not saying this to shame you if you have crystals. I'm not saying this to shame you if you sell crystals. I'm saying this to bring awareness to the truth of what we are doing to our planet. And I'm owning my part, right? Like, I have done this and I'm still tempted. Like, I see crystals for sale and I'm still like, ooh, I want that. I want that. And then I think I have to take a step back. And sometimes I still give in and make a purchase, even though it's truly not in alignment with my highest truth or my highest ideals around what I believe is best for myself or this planet. I still sometimes give in to the draw of consumerism. It's just what's real for me. So, what's it like to mine crystals? What does it look like? Where do our crystals come from? Who is going down into the earth and mining them for us? What country do they come from, and what are their labor practices? What sort of safety guidelines do they have for their workers? What sort of safety guidelines do they have for our planet? Also, very recently, I was talking to a girlfriend who lives on a farm that has always been beautifully high and dry. And over the last 10 years, there has been a massive amount of construction around her farm. In fact, she would now actually be in the suburbs. There's a high school in her backyard. The baseball field butts up to her farm, and she has found over 10,000 baseballs in her pasture. And she used to give them back, but they were promising to build a higher fence, and they're not doing that. And her horses eat the baseballs. The baseballs hit the horses in the pasture and cause hematomas and other contusions on her livestock. She has found like the skins off of baseballs in the horse's feces. They've eaten the skin off as they graze and then pooped it back out again. This is horrifying. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the construction and how the drainage ditches are now overflowing, and how her farm that is 10 feet above sea level and has always been high and dry, except at the entrances and exits to the barn, which if you have horses on the East Coast or anywhere where it rains, you're probably aware, get pretty muddy. Her pastures are now soggy. When she mows the grass, it molds underneath before it dries up or decomposes or blows away. And the construction damage that has been done is in this way. It has caused a difference in the water table, and her farm is now wet, really wet. It's because humanity, planners, don't plan for this kind of environmental impact. And yes, this goes back to crystal and gem mining. Because if in the US, where we have OSHA and all sorts of environmental impact things in place, and this sort of impact is still overlooked, imagine what it's like in nations where they just don't give a fuck for the land, for the earth, for the people who are mining these gems, mining these crystals, for the children who are in there mining these crystals, for the people who lose their lives in the process of mining. If you're in the United States or the United Kingdom, probably also true for Canada, you're probably familiar with the human impacts of coal mining. I'm not sure that the impacts are similar for gemstone mining. I have not researched that, but it might be worth looking into, like mine cave-ins and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that any sort of mining creates an environmental impact. And this has come more and more and more into my awareness because my husband is a prospector for gold. He loves prospecting for gold. And in order to dredge, meaning vacuum the dirt out of a river onto a raft where he can then go through and look for gold, he has to go to Idaho because it's illegal everywhere else, because the environmental devastation caused by gold dredging is so vast and so violent. And yes, there's some conflict in history in our marriage around this. I can't stop him from doing what he wants to do, going where he wants to go. It's just not possible. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I want him to be on board with being an earth keeper, someone who husbands the earth, someone who husbands the body of the mother, meaning not only the earth, but my own body in a way that is ethical and tender and done in a way that means he is engaging with the body of the beloved in a very intentional, very tender, very passionate and aware way. And that's not what's happening. And it's not what's happening with crystal mining either. So whenever we purchase crystals for resale, and especially whenever we purchase crystals for ourselves or for resale from vendors whose ethics we are not aware of, or whose provenance we are unable to trace, we are part of a problem of violence against our planet. And we are purchasing something that has in all likelihood caused environmental harm, if not environmental devastation. It's not very spiritual when you look at it from this point of view. Is it? Is it? And if those of us on spiritual paths who claim we're all about embodiment and all about getting back into nature and connecting with the planet in a deeper way, if we're trying to do that and we're still surrounding ourselves with items that were brought to us from path of trauma, maybe it's time for us to take a really deep look at what we consider to be spiritual. And you can see I have a whole shelf of things behind me because I too am on a path of learning. Some of those things are antiques that I inherited from my mother. Some of them are gifts that I've been given. Some of them are, um, yeah, I see the little guy throwing the discus. That's something that was my dad's that was left in his gym, and it was covered in dirt and fly spots, and I rescued him. Um, and then some of them are things that I've purchased from Amazon.com, who we all know is the devil. So I'm not here to tell you you have to be perfect. I'm not here to tell you that I'm doing it perfectly. I'm here to say it's time for us to bring some awareness to the impacts of the purchases we're making in the name of spirituality. Flowers are another thing. If your altar is covered with roses that were imported from Chile or South Africa or Holland, think about how they got here, how much jet fuel and gasoline and petroleum products were consumed in getting those flowers from wherever they were grown to their arrival point on your altar. And y'all, I'm going to put roses on my altar. I'm going to. It's inevitable. Sometimes. But I want to do it consciously and with an understanding of the impact that my consuming that product has. Yeah, I think that's it. I just felt like it's time to talk about the impact of our crystal obsession in spiritual communities. We are not saving the planet. We are destroying it. And it's time that somebody said it out loud. So that's all for me for today. I will post this to YouTube. Maybe I'll post it as a podcast. I haven't found another producer, so it would just be me talking. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening. This is Bettina Magdalena Colonna Essert out. May you be blessed.